Twitch actually thinks we're live or not.
Right. Twitch says we're live.
Okay, cool. Well, hello and welcome, Delvers, to another episode of my sometimes boring, sometimes interesting, sometimes rambly art stream.
It's always at least the latter two things.
It's A and B, but not C and sometimes D.
Right.
I paint some stuff.
It's never boring, but it's oftentimes rambly and always entertaining. How's that?
Except for the people to whom those things are synonymous. So if rambly equals boring to you, we're not even sure what this qualifies as.
Well, those people are wrong, and they need to get over it. Not that I'm an unbiased opinion. I should keep this out though. So, but before I do that, welcome to Delvers Drop podcast / whatever we want to call this for Wednesday the 27th. I'm here with Ryan Baker, who is the lead creative director and visionary director of Philoscopic. Any other titles you want me to throw in there?
Just master of all things.
Master of all things, and just a really cool guy.
Master of paperwork. The last, first of the year, I'm master of paperwork for about 3 months. That's yeah, not a title I enjoy having, but it becomes necessary.
Well, I suppose that's a side effect of running a business, right?
Yeah. Sometimes you wonder how any businesses make money.
Corruption?
Or keep the money they have. I mean, I could handle a little bit of corruption right now. Actually, no. We do our taxes and all of those things, but
right.
I would like to not be doing it. I would like to just rob a bank right now. You know, if that were something that
you could get away with.
Well, no, something that was like morally upstanding. We'll put it in that category. If robbing banks was morally upstanding, I would definitely do it right now.
Right. I don't know. Everyone has different morals, right? Here comes relativist Kyle, right?
Well, let's say both moral and legal, and not liable to put me in jail. But then everyone would be doing it. If it were morally okay, legal, and I wouldn't go to jail.
It would certainly be harder for you to complete your video game if you were in jail.
It's true.
And then you wouldn't be making any money off of that either.
Yeah, surely there's a market for professional bank robbers. Legal, morally upstanding professional bank robbers.
Absolutely. Doom is saying Bakerhood, morally upstanding robbery. I was gonna say, if I had to get enough money to save a hospital, I could think of a way of moralizing that, but by robbing a bank.
Yeah. Well, I mean, saving a hospital, now you're kind of qualifying it, right?
Right. Well, that's what I meant. I mean, this actually brings up an interesting topic. Speaking of rambly stuff, anything can be hand waved, right? You can always find a justification. I have to rob this. I have to rob this bank because my grandmother is dying and I can't make the money I need in a time allotment that it will save my grandmother. So it's okay for me to rob the bank.
Don't they say
life.
What is it that the road to hell is paved with?
Yes, the road to hell is paved with good intentions is the saying. Yes.
Right. I was just making sure you knew it.
Yes. Oh yes.
Now I totally forgot what I was gonna look for. I was looking for something that I actually just realized might be top secret.
Oh no, show it. And Doom says I have to rob because the voices tell me to. Which is the category that I fall into.
This is the top secret thing that I wasn't supposed to show.
Oh, okay. I'm gonna pause everything that I'm looking at just so I can catch it.
That doesn't even have what I was looking for. Never mind.
Oh, that's the thing that you weren't supposed to show.
I assume it's just catching up for you since you're for anyone who doesn't know, Kyle, although he's live with me on Skype, because that would be hard to have conversations if not, but so that we aren't sort of double streaming, I'm not screen sharing with him, so he has to watch on Twitch, which is 30 seconds later, which I'm sure, since how many viewers do we have? 2.5?
We have 5 right now, yeah.
Oh, okay. So probably most of those people know what's up.
Yeah. Quick question, console release. After PC release.
Yes. Yeah. we're still working so hard just to like squeak to a PC and Mac and so forth release that console release is like, I mean, it's, as I've always said before, it's like on our radar. We would have to port the engine. We'd love to do it. It would cost a lot, all that stuff, so who knows, maybe someday. But basically we just can't let it get in the way of the initial PC release. And it
says PS4, Xbox release. Fika hasn't been here. Yes, it will have local co-op. Fika. Fika wasn't here last time we talked about this. I will try to find the episode Fika where we talked about localization, and I'll post that in the chat at some point.
Well, we can probably talk about it for a couple seconds here. I mean, because I finally dug up my image that I wanted to reference for stroke weights and stuff that no one cares about except me. So, I mean, what was the question? Maybe we can give like a short response.
He wants it on PS4 and Xbox One.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, probably I would say if we were able to port, unless if it's a huge success, yeah, we'll port to everything. If it's a moderate success and we're like, oh, a console port makes sense, like we've got enough money to, invest the several months of programming potentially that it would cost to do it, and we think it would recoup that investment and everything, then we would probably have to pick one or the other. I mean, and people have asked kind of which is the most likely. I mean, right now, just fundamentally to port our engine, the easiest port would be a PS4. The second easiest would, I believe, be Xbox One and then Wii U in that order. And then, people ask about Vita. Vita's probably similar to Wii U, and then after that would be 3DS and who knows what else. If it's Android-based, we could port much more easily because the order that the releases are going to happen are PC and Mac, then Linux also before launch, so that allows us to do Android pretty soon after Linux is done, and then iOS we already have a little bit of support, but we'd have to do a bit more work. So all of those are kind of the front runners, and then after that we could probably also support anything else that's Android based. So people ask about that a lot. Ouya was part of our Kickstarter campaign, but things like Amazon Fire TV or Fire Stick probably also theoretically possible. I don't think our programmer Kobe has really looked into it too much, but yeah, I mean that's kind of the gist of everything, I guess.
All sounds pretty good. I'd buy it for the 3DS. Because I own a 3DS. Although, by the time this comes out, maybe the Wii U wouldn't be whatever the next gen that they're working on would be out by then, I think.
Yeah, the NX that I keep seeing rumors about and everything.
Yeah. I find it hard as an old school Nintendo player to want to keep supporting Nintendo. And it's harder still as a content creator that I suppose I am to support them, just because of their policies. Not to be political or anything like that about it.
Well, but yeah, I mean, I think that's pretty fair to talk about, though. Sorry, I'm finally kind of up and running here with all the stuff I need to work on some weapons. We didn't even say what we were working on, I guess, but
I tweeted what we were working on. But we're working on weapons today. I don't think we've actually ever worked on them since.
It's been a long time. Yeah.
We worked on them, and you guys worked on them on the old stream, but I don't think we've ever worked on them on the new stream.
Yeah. So I'm what I'm going to be doing today is a couple things. I started revising or kind of updating the old weapon icons, cleaning them up a little bit. splitting some categories, and so I'm going to be kind of going through and, I mean, we never finished all of the original weapons. We didn't even have one of each type completely done. And so I'm going to be kind of going through and making a slightly more standardized kind of, I would like to get to the point that we have one of each type of weapon sooner than later, instead of kind of slogging through, like 10 more axes or whatever. So I'm just going to kind of start at the top of the list and maybe just kind of go through chronologically here.
Okay.
And some of these we have some iterations for, but I'm going to make just fundamentally this is like your most basic dagger, your most basic sword, and so on, which we never even totally did the first time around. So anyway.
So before we get into the weighty topic of archaic policies on content creation and in the internet as a medium to broadcast one's creations, any news on the website?
It is still in progress. We between us moving and actually the guy who's helping us program it is in the process of, I think, getting married and moving. We hit a couple snags, but a lot is set up. And for anyone who doesn't know, it's basically we've been working on, I say we, but it's mostly been an outside programmer who's a friend of ours and wanted to help out with the game and everything. He's been working on an online system where our Kickstarter backers or anyone who kind of pre-orders the game kind of on early access or whatever you want to call it. I mean, right now you can buy it and play it, so it's kind of a sort of unofficial early access, I suppose. So if you buy it now or buy it early, you would get access to our website. You can obviously already have access to our forums, but there would be like a single login. You can log into the forums, use the same username for your high scores and stuff in the game, and then also download old builds and download other kind of bonuses and Kickstarter rewards depending on your, when you backed and thing or supported us and that sort of thing. So it's I think the most interesting thing out of all of that is really just being able to download those old builds and I assume that's probably what you were excited about, right, Kyle?
I mean, yeah, but I just, to have it on record that it's still, progressing and all that.
Yeah.
I mean, I've played every build that's been able to be played, I suppose, so I'm excited for other people to be able to play older builds to see how far the game has come.
Yeah.
So yeah, I just thought I'd ask. It's better than saying, "Hey, when's the game coming out?"
Yeah.
Or "Hey, where's our new build?" So, but on the Nintendo thing, I mean, Sega tried it and it bit them hard. Not that Sega really makes video games anymore; they're more of a publisher. Not that they publish many games anyway either. But Nintendo's more entrenched, I suppose, in a larger company, so they can kind of throw their weight around. I know a lot of big named YouTubers and companies that won't touch Nintendo stuff because of their policy.
Mm-hmm. And I mean, did you actually say what that policy is though? Just
Oh, sorry. Well, it's changed in the last couple of months.
And see, I probably don't know about the change, actually.
So Nintendo's original policy was any content that was made from their video games would be flagged, which in YouTube speech means any money that video makes, it goes to them. Which it sucks. And not to put too fine a point on it, part of the problem is that YouTube's copyright claim system is really, really difficult for the content creators. It assumes a guilty until proven innocent sort of style, where you have to lobby against someone who puts a claim forth.
Mm-hmm.
But anyone can put a claim forth. Anyone could go to any one of my videos and say, "You have a copywritten element in the video, and any income you make on this video goes to us."
Mm-hmm.
And then it's my job to say, no, there's not. Here's the proof. And it's all automated. There's no real person involved in that because, of course, there's not, because it'd be too difficult. So, especially for a large company like Nintendo, they kind of have an easier time with it because they are obviously they have advertising on YouTube, and they're a large company, and they put money toward YouTube and other places like YouTube that have the same similar style of DMCA. So for a while, that was their modus operandi. Then I think it was September or October, they came out and said, no, we're not going to continue this. We're going to update our policy. And a lot of people go, that's really cool, because you should. And a lot of YouTubers and a lot of people who are much better at charting income generation via advertising took the time to chart how much money Nintendo made basically after all the big named YouTubers boycotted Nintendo. And not every big name YouTuber boycotted Nintendo, but there was a lot of people who boycotted Nintendo, and there was an obvious hit in marketing from YouTube. YouTube makes up a good deal of advertising for companies. So Nintendo, more or less, as far as anyone can tell, saw a decrease in money and said, crap, we need to revise our policy. So they came out with this, basically a multi-channel network, which, if you don't know YouTube, multi-channel networks are kind of these large corporation kind of style management systems that bring in talent and kind of protect talent. Because they pay in for advertising, they take a bit of your advertising to kind of have this umbrella of protection around you. YouTube made a change to that too. That's a completely separate issue, which goes back to the DMCA stuff. But for Nintendo, basically they said, okay, if you want to make the Nintendo stuff, you can join us in our multi-channel network. You can become a Nintendo content creator. We'll take a portion of your revenue, and we won't bother you.
So does any of this apply to Twitch as well? I assume it does to some degree, right?
No, it hasn't reached Twitch, as far as I know, because the way that Twitch works is money works is different than YouTube.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
A person can't come to Twitch and say, hey, this stream has content of my game. Google Stream, however, and Doom is saying this, it does work for Google Stream, but nobody really uses Google Streaming because Twitch is a better platform.
Well, is that the same thing as YouTube streaming, since Google owns YouTube, or how?
Yeah, it's the same thing. Google Streaming is the same thing as
YouTube. I'm definitely behind the times on quite a few of these things.
What Twitch will do if there's copywritten material, and as far as I know, it's only music. And we've had a couple run-ins with this. It will mute that section of the stream afterwards. And that's really a recent thing that only started last year.
Mm-hmm.
So, and a lot of people weren't really happy with that shift, but Twitch is owned by Amazon now, and Twitch is the premier streaming platform, so they want to make more money, obviously. So when let's say Taylor Swift comes and says, I don't want people making money off of my music on their streams.
Mm-hmm.
Well, it's really hard to do that live. They could do it if they could do it during your live broadcast, but they don't. So, they say, okay, Taylor Swift, anytime after the stream is done, we mute that section and nobody hears that. The main thing about that is nobody really watches playback on Twitch. That's not really what they do. It's not what people are here for. Which is why we try to upload all of these to YouTube, because people do come and watch. on YouTube. The metrics are way, way better. So, yeah, it's this is all new emergent technology. The laws for copyright and trademark and all that sort of and patents and stuff aren't really adapted toward this new technology. And it's difficult to change because they're really entrenched. Doom is saying it's not all new, but you know what I mean. It is emergent. This is emergent technology. Streaming is absolutely emergent technology. How long has streaming been around? And Doom is saying the law's been adapted to radio, but radio isn't streaming, and streaming isn't TV either. So, it's the laws aren't set up to where it is okay with YouTube and streaming. Having talked to patent lawyers, like my brother, it's still pretty murky. Which my brother actually has done some stuff with YouTube copyright stuff.
Interesting. Doesn't he live and work in Japan? Or am I making that up?
He was, but he's living. He was moving back and forth, but he lives in Ohio.
Okay.
Now. Since he's gotten married, he hasn't gone back.
Okay. Well, I guess to kind of jump to a subject of potentially broader interest, although yes. I definitely needed to kind of catch up on those policies. And I mean, we had kind of goofed up a few times because, way back when we were playing Pandora or something, which we probably should have known better, but just it wasn't a big deal like a couple years ago. And so now we've got some streams that are just completely muted.
Yeah, I don't know if it's completely retroactive, but a lot of Kobe's programming streams have been muted.
Yeah, which definitely sucks because an art stream you could put some of your own music on and it might be interesting to watch. A programming stream, it might be interesting for 5 seconds when he runs the build, and then uninteresting for the next 10 minutes while he types code. So that kind of sucked, but
I think you guys are just down on yourself. I always enjoyed them.
Well, no, I just mean if you had to listen or watch it without any audio or without Kobe explaining it, it's definitely not going to be quite as interesting.
Yeah. Well, now you have me here, and I research all this stuff. So.
Mm-hmm. Well, what have you or anyone else who's watching? What has everyone been playing lately?
Dragon's Dogma.
Yeah. And okay, so people are gonna figure out I just turned into an old man and I'm working on Delver's Drop and haven't read the news in the last 3 years. That's not really true, but that's what it feels like some days. So what is so I know Dark Arisen, is that the new?
Yeah, that's basically the remastered version.
So
it's DLC on the PS and Xbox.
So it's a remastered version of the original. Is that the deal?
I'm sorry.
Is it a remastered version of the original Dragon's Dogma?
Yeah, it's a remastered edition of.
So there hasn't been a sequel,
and
right?
It's got DLC. It has a MMO.
What?
The Dragon's Dogma has an MMO.
When did that happen?
I can check that for you.
Well, I
don't think it's not in the U.S.
Oh, okay. Well, then, yeah. I mean, I still kind of follow the U.S. news here and there, but if it's
January 15th. Apparently, it was in January of last year. It was announced last year. Dragon Dogma Online.
But it isn't released yet.
I think it is, but I don't see a link to it. It's definitely an interesting game. It takes a lot of getting used to. I think I'm finally starting to kind of come into my own. Oh, here it is. The game is launched August 31st, 2015. More than 1 million downloads in its first 10 days of release. So it is out, just not in the US market.
Mm-hmm. I'm kind of surprised, but I mean, yeah, MMOs have a lot of costs and so on associated with them, so I guess it seems like it's the kind of thing that could be successful in the U.S. I mean, if there were like, I don't know, like a Dark Souls MMO, people would be all over that, or something along those lines. It might not adapt. I've never really played MMOs, so someone might call me crazy for saying that. But I think something that's maybe not the Dark Souls property exactly, although I think that would be super interesting in a lot of ways. But it would maybe, like, all these people exploring this mysterious world and trying to figure out what's going on in the lore. Like, that would be a super interesting MMO.
Mm-hmm.
And no one's really done it. Like, usually MMOs are just kind of. It seems like the story is a bit more straightforward, especially because a lot of it just boils down to kind of like level grinding and that sort of thing, which a lot of people try playing Dark Souls without actually leveling up.
Yes, there are level 1 playthroughs for sure.
But
and he was saying X game as an MMO is a big risk, and he cites Final Fantasy XIV. And Elder Scrolls Online.
Yeah.
Which, I've not played either of those. I've played plenty of MMOs in my day, but neither of those. Everything I hear about Final Fantasy XIV from people is that since it was re-released, it's pretty good. But I haven't played it, so I can't vouch for it. I played World of Warcraft for a really long time. EverQuest 2. I betaed EverQuest 1. I was in the beta for Dark Age of Camelot. And I baited for Anarchy Online back in the day. And all three of those I thought weren't very good. Although Dark Age of Camelot was pretty cool in the beta. But
yeah, most of those I don't really even know that much about. I guess like I did a little more research on some of the more recent MMOs. Still haven't put in the time to play any, but I played like a tiny bit of WoW for like a few hours, but it just was not running well on my Mac, so that was one hindrance. But yeah, I just don't know if I was ever going to be able to get into it. I got a little interested when I assume it's probably happened by now, or maybe not, but they were like reskinning everything.
I know that the humans, the dwarves, and the orcs got reskinned.
Yeah, with like higher res textures and much better art, because that was my biggest complaint, I think, is I always thought WoW was super ugly. And I am kind of probably no one uses this term anymore, but a bit of a graphics whore. It just drives me kind of crazy when things don't look really polished or don't look. I mean, in some of it, you could say is opinion, but when I don't like the art style or just think it's a poor art style, too.
It's very cartoony.
Well, but it used to be like weird Uncanny Valley cartoony and just horrible colors. I mean, like I like things that are colorful and kind of crazy, but it was colorful and crazy without actually, like, it was just like, purple and green for no reason everywhere. Yeah. So anyway. So
yeah, that's what I've been playing.
And I think you had talked about Dragon's Dogma a little bit last week, right?
Yeah, I started playing it last week. I've also been doing some Fallout 4 off camera, just on my off time. Not to get too involved with that. It's okay. It's definitely not as good as New Vegas. I don't think.
Everyone I've heard from seems to really like 4, but I haven't really heard any comparisons.
You haven't talked to Doom.
Oh, well, no, I guess I have not.
It's okay. I mean, I have a lot of complaints. I don't need to air them here. And I've been playing Borderlands 2 with a dude for recordings and stuff, and EU4, of course. Those are kind of staple things that I play. So.
Yeah, I started kind of picking Borderlands back up this week, Borderlands 2. I had been playing a little bit of the pre-sequel at one point in between because I got kind of sick of 2 and just was curious what was going on in the pre-sequel and wasn't terribly impressed. I mean, it was kind of interesting, but it just
the pre-sequel is just an overglorified DLC.
Yeah, I mean, it kind of seemed that way, but yeah.
I like what they did with the classes. I think the classes are a little bit more Borderlands 1. But I mean, I enjoyed the pre-sequel. I like the storyline, but it's so the first Borderlands, if you do everything, is like 50 hours long. Like on a slow, like on a fast, like doing everything perfectly in time.
Mm-hmm.
Borderlands 2 is double that to triple that.
Yeah, it's definitely longer, but it seems like the difficulty is way more kind of. The difficulty is just really different between those two games. I've always thought.
Yeah.
Like I don't know. It's like
I think 2 is more difficult. Because
yeah, it's difficult in weird ways, but yeah, I mean there's definitely better AI, but it manages to like it. I don't know, like parts of it seem like they get really easy, but then like a thresher pops out and just like completely wipes you. So it's just like the easy things are easier and the hard things are harder. So it's hard to say it's not balanced, but it just feels weird. Whereas the first Borderlands, and we've probably said this like 500 times, so I'll stop. But yeah, the first Borderlands, you could just run backwards and shoot things, and I kind of like the dumb fun of that. So to repeat myself again.
Yeah, for whatever reason, my graphics card doesn't like Borderlands 1 now. So I need to figure out how to get it to work. Because I'd like to go back and play it. I like all 3 Borderlands games. My point was just Borderlands 1's 50 hours. Borderlands 2 I think is 120, and for full playtime. And Borderlands, the pre-sequel, is like 25 hours.
Oh, really? I didn't realize it was that short. I definitely didn't play that far into it. I mean,
this isn't including the DLC into the times.
So I've kind of been wondering if I'm close to the end of Borderlands 1, Borderlands 2. I beat Borderlands 1. I think I only beat it once, but I almost beat it a second time. I got like really close to the end and then quit because Borderlands 2 came out. But yeah, like Borderlands 2, I played through once and got to a point where the world kind of opens up and you're in the what is the place called? I'm gonna forget now, but it's like where all the Threshers show up. It's that area.
Yeah, I forget what it's called.
But I mean, doesn't really matter. But so I get there and kind of complete a few of the required missions, and then I just got bored. But then so that happened the first time, so I've been playing it again, and this time I got bored again in the same place and kind of quit playing for a bit, and also got married and stuff. But then I started wondering, am I actually close to the end of the game? Because then it would seem, if I'm close to the end, it seems short, but you're telling me it's longer, so maybe I'm not.
There's a lot of optional quests and
yeah, and usually I do all of those, but I mean, right now it's I have the quest where it's like you have to do these 3 impossible things to get into this guarded area and get
you're not anywhere. You're like at the halfway point.
Okay. Yeah, it felt like it had this in-game sort of arc. Like I figured there was going to be like one more big fortress or something, but yeah. So I guess I don't know if that's heartening or disheartening because I am currently still a little bored. I think and I should probably just keep doing the story missions for a while and then go back and clean up the side missions if I want to or have time later. But I'm like, no, I must complete them all in order. Is kind of how I usually do these things. So
I'm gearing up to go through it again. Because when you beat the game, you get Ultimate Vault Hunter mode, which increases the difficulty a little bit by adding new enemies and more HP and all that. But it scales, and it also all starts to scale to your level. And then once you beat the game in Ultimate Vault Hunter mode, it goes to Badass mode, which is similar. So. So yeah,
well,
I mean, I like it. But I wouldn't like. I'll say this: I wouldn't like playing Borderlands 2 by myself.
Yeah, which is what I tend to do because I always just play everything offline.
Right. I mean, I'll play with you.
Yeah, we should. Well, I guess the one thing that always bugs me, and this is just like, see, I'm really weird when it comes to games. I guess I just played so many games single player growing up and everything, but I feel like it's cheating because it becomes easier, or at least Borderlands 1 did when I played with other people. Like, I joined up with this guy who was a higher level than me, a friend of mine, and he was just like mowing everyone down, and I couldn't kill anything. Of course, we were playing the General Knox DLC, so it was probably just like way above my level, but. But yeah, like, so I'm always afraid, like, oh man, I'm not going to be able to do anything if I play it with anyone because everyone has more time to level up than I do.
I just wouldn't level that character. I'd only play that character with you. And Doom and Dithy are saying beat the game more than once for the proper ending. Borderlands 2 doesn't have like beat the game more than once for a proper ending. It's always the same ending. It's just more difficulty. And Doom is saying you should just be able to have that level of difficulty from the get-go, which I agree with. Having to beat the game one time
just have a hard mode.
Right. Yeah, I agree with that. But yeah, no, there's no like, oh, you get a special cutscene if you beat the game 4 times in a row. Yeah, I think that stuff is kind of, unless it's a game like The Binding of Isaac, where the idea is to play the game multiple times, then yeah. I don't like the, oh, well, you beat the game, now it's New Game Plus mode, and then you get the true ending. It's just like, I've already played 90 hours in your game. You want me to play another 90 hours in the game to see the true ending? I think Isaac does it best with, and I know I have a lot of complaints about how Isaac has turned out, but I really like how they have multiple endings by fulfilling certain criteria. And of course I say this because I know that Delver's Drop will also have this sort of style. So, but then again, Delver's Drop is another game where you're supposed to be playing multiple times. So.
Yeah, I actually have some slightly new ideas about ways to, well, so that people are interested in playing multiple times without kind of feeling like, oh, like the difficulty is just, like to make it to where, without developing entirely new systems or anything, just kind of tweaking a few things, you could play multiple times and kind of get different things out of it, or change your play style. Like kind of, I would really like to let people kind of have different rogue builds. I mean, they aren't going to be incredibly different, but like change up the way you play after you beat the game, kind of systems.
Right. Well, and Doom just said, and this is something that he and I have discussed a lot in light of some of the changes to the classes. The best way to have
our classes.
Yes. I never let it be said that I'm not critical of Delver's Drop, even if I'm a mega fan. I think Baker will attest, I'm probably one of the harshest critics on Delver's Drop.
I would say Doom is definitely the harshest critic. I don't know where you rank. I mean, I guess we don't have a lot of other criticism except for just the we aren't done yet kind of criticism, which is
right.
Is
totally
fair.
You'll get it once the game is released on Steam.
Yeah.
Doom and I have already.
I'm sort of looking forward to that day.
Yeah, it'll be good. I mean, it'll be a mark that you guys are moving forward, a visible mark that you're moving forward, which I think you guys will enjoy. Doom and I have already offered to slog through Steam forums for you guys.
Mm-hmm.
And Doom is saying harshest critic. Yes, Doom is definitely harsher than I am when it comes to some things. I think he and I have a trade-off on some areas where he's a little less harsh and I'm a little bit more harsh, especially on the coming back with multiple live things. I'm definitely way hardline on that. But what I was saying was replayability in classes is really important. Having classes feel different is really important. And one of the things that I think took away from that, and I think Doom and I have both bitched and moaned about this is taking away like the slidiness on the sorcerer, making it more grippy.
Well, you're in luck because because physics is, well, since Kobe is still kind of overhauling it, we're gonna have to more or less from scratch rewrite the character stats. I mean, some things will carry over, but it's like what you know 5 used to be a moderate amount of slippiness might now be crazy slippiness, or might be none at all. So the numbers are gonna have to get totally rebalanced, and we're gonna strive for a very similar feel. But I'm up for doing some interesting stuff and.
Well, and my point with that would be having a character start off at base with different controls. It makes them feel like different characters, and it gives them a bit of personality. Oh, well, the sorcerer's really slippy because not because he's like covered in grease, but he's hovering off the ground, so it makes sense that he has less traction. Oh, well, here's the gladiator who's supposed to be this big hulking thing in massive armor. It makes sense that he's A, slower, but B, also harder to move. So it kind of ties into the personality of the style of class. And then you guys are going to have a skill-based system. You guys are going to have skill trees, which we've already talked about. Like, okay, well, here's a skill tree for the sorcerer where it increases traction on the character, and it changes the variability of the class. And I think that's a really good direction for not just character growth, but playstyle growth, because you can make any character what you want it to be in the confines of what that character's role is. And I think, especially in a game with multiple characters, it's important to know what the role is for said character. Isaac, for example, all the things play the same because there's really not a robust system in place in Isaac. In Isaac, is a good comparison because there's a lot of similarities in at least how many characters there are and what the characters can do. But even then, Edmund has said, "Oh, well, Judas is the mage." He is, glass cannon, high damage, low health, mage. Maggie's the cleric.
Yeah.
She, high health, kind of slow, ability to heal herself. Each character has an archetype. And in Delver's Drop, the archetype is in the name. You're a sorcerer. Okay, well, sorcerer evokes what? Ranged magic combat. Okay, well, that's something that he should be focusing on. That's the playstyle that you're looking for. So what is a sorcerer typically? Okay, low health, obviously. And high damage. All right. Same with gladiator. Slow, heavy armor, a lot of health. And so on and so forth. Not to belabor the point. So, if you want to say, I want to play a gladiator that's a little bit faster. Okay, well, what do you change to make that faster? Okay, a little bit less traction, maybe a little bit more character speed, maybe a little less health. Maybe speccing the character that way. There should be downsides and upsides. There should always be a balance between the positives and the negatives that you get. There should never be a pure positive or a pure negative when it comes to character stats. There should never be a skill that says you get -5 speed, done. Because no one, and it's not because it's a bad idea. It's just that no player will take that. No one's going to take a strict negative when they can take a positive with a little bit of negative.
Yeah, of course.
So,
I was meaning to ask you guys something that I was thinking about recently, and now I completely lost my train of thought. So I'll have to get that back in a second. Okay, sorcerer balance. And I know you're probably going to say, like, well, the sorcerer's range, like, kind of infinite shots of ranged magic, that you can just kind of fire like a slow machine gun, are somewhat balanced by the fact that he's super slippy and really hard to control. But I mean, to someone who like you guys got good enough with him that I mean, it seemed like you could control him about as well as you could the rogue.
The sorcerer is my favorite class. I'll play the sorcerer as he was originally, super slippy, with decent range and variable damage. I would play him over the rogue.
Yeah. So I guess the thing I've been wondering though is, I mean, I've been thinking about how do we balance characters that have a ranged ability as their primary weapon type and kind of infinite ammo attack, for lack of a better way to put it, because for anyone who doesn't know, the primary weapon for all characters, and some of them have a few, but like the sorcerer uses these bottles, and the way I would like to change the animation so we actually, like, his windup is him taking a swig from this bottle and then breathing spirit energy, so these puffs of spirit energy that attack things. But he gets infinite ammo for that weapon, whereas if he tries to use a rapier like I'm drawing right now, he will dull the rapier over time because he sucks at it, and if he's really bad at it, he will eventually break it when it runs out of ammo. But if he's just kind of okay with it, then he can refill it by finding sharpening, like basically flint stones are a kind of ammo. So but anyway, all of that to say, I've been thinking about slightly changing the way magic attacks work, and probably some projectiles too, to where we have attacks and then charged attacks, and so far charged attacks are really the only point to do them is that you can aim them. But
that's a cutlass, by the way. Chad is saying what you're doing now. What you're building now is a cutlass, not a rapier.
Well, sure.
I just thought I would let you know.
Well, I mean, because it has the bigger basket hilt.
And the blade shape.
Well, I mean, when you zoom out to the size that'll actually be in game, I mean, I could probably make the blade a little thinner, but basically I have to bulk up all these details or you just can't see them. So when you're out this far, could you see a narrower blade? And yeah, I could probably make that a little bit thinner.
Yeah, I see your point.
I mean, because, well, a cutlass would be like this, right? It was something more like that. I mean, I guess that it would start becoming scimitar shaped at some point, but yeah, I've got to cheat a little bit sometimes.
And you were saying for balance, Doom has a couple ideas. I mean, we both. I think we've talked about them before. Range, speed of attack, damage, knockback that the things do.
Well, what I was thinking about doing, because we've talked about changing the way charged attacks work just a little bit. I mean, functionally they would stay the same. You hold down the button, you can now kind of swing and angle your character to aim more precisely while you're charging. But I thought about making it so that for the sorcerer, he actually has to charge to shoot his spirit projectiles. If you just tap the button, you would either do a short range like magic melee, like he just kind of swings the bottle, or maybe it spews some gas out of the bottle just right in front of you, but it's more of like that limited range sort of attack. But it kind of makes a difference between, like, where most projectile weapons you have to charge them to get a projectile to actually come out. Like if you have a bow and you're just tapping the button for the bow, you would just swing it. Like, I've been watching a lot of Arrow, the TV show, with my wife Katie, and he basically fights people with swords using his bow, which wouldn't work for very long because they would cut the string, obviously. But right. But I think it kind of, like, if you don't get too realistic with it, it sort of, makes sense that you could, you can hit people with your bow or whatever, but...
right, I don't necessarily think a charge time is a bad idea. I mean, there was also talk of tying it to the special bar.
Right, and that's another thing I've been thinking about doing, is actually making the SP bar or energy bar or whatever we're calling it, actually make that more like Dark Souls stamina, like kind of, well, basically separate them, where you've got your charges for your special ability, which is an independent thing. So like, let's say it just says in your, in your UI, like you've got 3 special ability charges out of 4, and you charge it up, if you're the rogue, maybe you charge it up by collecting gold. Or something like that, where your stamina is constantly refilling over time, because you've got to be able to use that to do your dashes and dodges and that sort of thing. So yeah, I mean, one thing would be the sorcerer could drain a lot of his SP or his stamina to use his to shoot his projectiles, and so you can only do up to like 10 kind of in a burst, and then suddenly you can't dodge and can't fire. But I think we do, just because of the kind of game this is, I think we need to allow people to do some kind of a secondary melee attack with things, even if it's like, your sword is dulled to the point that it's unusable. I think people should still be able to like swing it just for like very little damage, like only kind of blunt damage, or something like that, or only knockback and it does no damage, so suddenly you aren't like crippled and you're like, oh, why can't I can't use any of my weapons, because I see people do that all the time at PAX. Now obviously if people have been playing the game quite a bit, they're going to know what's up, and that isn't really an issue, but it's just because people are used to the infinite durability of Zelda weapons, and our game looks so much like Zelda. I think people kind of come in with that expectation rather than like a sort of a Saga or a Dark Souls sort of mentality. Although that's that's changing some. Yeah, because everything has durability. The joke that I hear on all the podcasts is that your fists have durability.
Oh, in Saga?
In one of the Saga games, yeah.
I don't know if I've played that one.
It's one of the original. It's like Saga 2. So Final Fantasy, what do they call it? Final Fantasy, not Adventure. Final Fantasy Legends 2 on the Game Boy was what it was called in the U.S.
Maybe I think that sounds right.
I'm pretty sure that's correct. I was trying to like Adventure. So Final Fantasy Adventure is the first Seiken Densetsu, aka Secret of Mana game, and Final Fantasy Legends is the first Saga, or the first 3 Saga games. Actually, all of them came out in the U.S.
Mystic Quest, that's correct.
Well, Mystic Quest was originally, I think it was originally a Saga game in Japan, and then got rebranded. That one's a weird one. And Mystic Quest is actually something totally different in Europe, I believe.
So, localization in the 80s and 90s. It's a weird thing. But Dithy was saying, picturing a sorcerer's spec where he drinks blood and summons demons. Which I think we have weapons similar to that. I don't know, he said, but I said, we've got elementals, but he said his retort was, but demons. I don't know if we even have demon enemies. I don't think we do.
I mean,
we have some things that look demonic.
Yeah, I mean, I've kind of trended away from using the word demon in the Delver's Drop mythology. And I guess, it's mostly because most of the really nasty enemies are actually, they're based in the Murk, which is this, if anyone doesn't know, it's kind of like this acid type substance that there's like an ocean of it across the universe. So imagine like an endless ocean of this black substance that dissolves anything that touches it. And so most of the enemies come from the Murk, so they're not coming from like a Hades or like a Hell equivalent. They're coming from this other place. And the idea is that mankind can't quite understand their goals. I mean, so they're sort of Lovecraftian in a way. So, and for that reason, I don't like using the word demon, because that kind of conjures up like things that look like devils with a pitchfork, or I mean, I guess games have done them in a lot of different ways, but just trying to break away from any kind of existing cultural, mythological, whatever reference.
Right. We also don't have angels for the same reason.
Yeah. Yeah, in the core lore, I try to avoid any kind of pre-existing names for things. I've even tried to start expunging the term gods. I mean, that was kind of too easy, so I'm now calling what we called like the sun goddess and the moon god and so on, just calling them celestials, since they all have a sort of planet or heavenly body of some sort that is their kind of domain.
Right. Makes sense. Well, even then, I guess there was the orb gods. I guess they were called orb gods.
Yeah. I was we always had some kind of descriptor, but we were calling them gods sometimes. But yeah, I've started removing that text from the lore reference stuff. My secret lore doc that you don't have access to. Ha ha ha.
Right. Yes. And I would love to. But Doom makes a good point in that people being aware that they're not going to have a melee attack, that's the point of having different weapons. And they can have different weapons. And it's actually easier to get weapons because of adding charges and all that.
You might have to repeat that. I'm not sure I followed the point.
So you were saying that people were worried that as a ranged character they wouldn't have some melee type attack.
Well, it was just more that people would get super confused. Like if they're using a ranged weapon and let's say they run out of ammo for it, and you can still press the button and it just says like, you basically just get kind of an error message of sorts that like, out of ammo over and over again.
Right.
Like I would rather people not get stuck. And I mean, of course we're going to kind of force people to have a primary weapon. Like you have to start with one to some degree. Like I would like for people to be able to play the game bare-fisted, but so I guess we always have some ability to attack. So I mean I guess the alternative is if you're out of ammo and you press the button, you just bare fist. But I think it's not a very good kind of usability decision to have a weapon that you can like push the button and it just like clicks on empty, except it's a sword. Like it doesn't make sense for you to just like punch the button and it's just not doing anything. So I think I think we would just show a message that says like, it says like weapon is dull or weapon is empty and you punch instead. That might be a more elegant solution.
Right. What about status-causing weapons? Do they keep their effects?
Causing status to you mean?
No, let's say you have a sword that has a status effect.
And
it breaks. Would you be able to swing it and have it do its like base damage, or whatever, but still do the status effect?
So you're saying it does a status effect to the enemies that it hits, like it slows them or something.
Right. Well, let's say you have a flaming sword, and it's not your primary weapon, and it breaks. It breaks, quote unquote. It runs out of charges that you can use, but you can still swing it. It just doesn't do any damage, obviously. Would it still cause the status effect?
Yeah, and we would probably have to turn all of those off, so that might be more of a pain. And it probably makes sense to, like we were just saying, just have it have it switch to where you just punch with your fist. Excuse me, got the hiccups all of a sudden. So you just it pops up a little message, and you punch with your fist if you're accidentally still trying to use that weapon.
The chat is saying that its default weapon should just be like hitting people with the leg of ham, which then said, "Oh hey, what about a chef class? Every food item has pickup doubles as a weapon." Which I don't think Dithy wasn't here for the butcher.
Yeah, the joke character we've talked about forever.
Yes, yeah. Which I really hope remains a thing. I really like the butcher. I kind of have this romantic idea of classes that didn't make the cut.
Yeah.
Because I think in any game where like cut content it's like, well, that's really interesting. I really like that kind of lore. I think we've talked about that, like with Shadow of the Colossus, where there are these colossi that didn't get included in the game for either time constraints or they weren't able to.
Yeah, of course, I think like cutting something that was partially done is maybe different from like, oh, we had ideas for for this class or that class, but we never made a single piece of artwork for them.
Right.
But yeah, I mean,
and in some of the classes that you guys had ideas for did have artwork. I still have the Mercomancer drawing, for example. And I just think it not only does it add a little bit of appeal to a game where it's like, oh, well, we have all these ideas, especially in a company like you guys, which are relatively new, and there's a possibility that there's a second Delver's Drop game. Those ideas could be put in. Unlike with Shadows of the Colossus, where there's never going to be another Shadow of Colossus game. They're not going to make a Shadows of Colossus 2, the Colossening, or anything like that.
It was originally an MMO.
The idea was to be originally an MMO with like 100, and then the budget got cut, and they're like, okay, well, we'll do. I think there's 16 in the game.
That sounds right.
And they were thinking of doing 32, but they didn't get to do all 32 because, again, just constraints and hardware problems. And then they're like, okay, well, we'll do it to down like 20 something. And then like 5 or 6 of those got cut, 2 of which were cut because they were just not feasible with the mechanics of the game. One was like a flying phoenix.
That they just, I was actually reading up on that a little bit recently. I saw some images. I didn't realize they actually had models, or at least early.
The Phoenix one has a model. Not all of them had models. And that one's like something Flam. It's like Welsh name for like the eternal flame, and that one was cool. There was a strange one where it was like a bison that you had to like run through a series of smaller gates. There was a monkey one that like hung from stalactites.
Oh, that sounds kind of cool.
Doom is saying the imp, which was another one, which I think is one of the ones that didn't have a model, but I'm not sure if that one did. There was also a spider one that looked pretty cool. So yeah, like I said, I like this. There's just I think a romantic element, not romantic as in lovey-dovey, but romantic as romantic writing, where you look at this butcher class and it's obvious that that's a joke. But then there are classes like I'm trying to think of a good one that we had on the forums. Well, I mean, Mercanomancer is a good one.
You mean Mercromancer?
Yeah, Mercromancer. Sorry. Or the best one obviously is the Cartographer.
Everyone's bizarre favorite.
Right, or the Bard, where the Bard was one of the closest ones to being added to the game, but didn't make the vote.
Yeah, forum favorite.
It's the forum favorite, where the Cartographer is just... There's just this idea where the Cartographer would really be cool because it would be different. It would be like the mime.
Well, and I had some interesting ideas for... I mean, this would be, if we're ever able to make another game with a... that probably wouldn't be an action RPG anymore. But I really like the idea of the entire world shifting randomly, both from kind of a lore perspective and mechanically, just for replayability, and so that every game is different and so on. But I was thinking, like, what better reason to have a cartographer that other than like the world constantly is shifting. So like what used to be your road from one town to another has now changed. Because like the planet is constantly kind of non-destructively, but is constantly tectonically shifting.
Right. And Dithy is saying Cartographer with abilities dependent on tile set he's currently occupying. That'd be really good if.
Yeah, so kind of like the Geomancer from Final Fantasy
exactly
Tactics is.
He says vaguely like the Geomancer in Final Fantasy Tactics.
Yeah, I like that. Because the other classes that I had like a whole list of class ideas for kind of future games, because I wanted to establish the lore for each guild now. So if anyone doesn't know, like each class in the game comes from a separate guild. Originally, the Assassin and the Rogue were going to be from the same guild, the Hanged Ones, and but then I changed it so that the Assassin is now from a different guild. But anyway, so I wanted to kind of establish a vibe for those guilds and make sure they didn't overlap, and kind of have a little bit of lore for them and so on. And so I came up with a list of potential classes that could go in each in each guild in some future game. And anyway, so all that to say, some of the other classes in the same guild as the cartographer would have been basically like scouts and people who could kind of help you get through any kind of environment. So kind of sort of survivalist, but not sort of like a hunter kind of wilderness wilderness survivalist, because that would be more like the assassins and the archers and hunters and so on, their guild, which I changed the name of like 10 times and now I can't remember what the final one was. But yeah, because I like the idea of basically they're mostly the cartographer's guild is pretty much non-combat. Like they're all utility and buffs and so on, and helping you find your way through mazes and environments and traps, and so they don't set traps. They know how to like disarm traps, that kind of thing.
Right. And I may or may not be a little bit be doing some spoilery stuff in the chat room that you can't see.
Are you pasting the
No, I would never be so overt.
I mean, I can just show it on the stream if we want to talk about some of those class ideas.
Oh, I mean, if you're cool with that. No,
they
were making a joke. They were making a joke about the butcher.
Oh, okay. Oh, so you dug up the old picture of the butcher?
No, I don't have it.
We still have them on our fridge. I'm gonna have to move those to the new office because Katie did one. And
it was like an office-wide thing. No, I don't have any of those because I don't know how to rip them from the stream. I guess I could just pause and print screen and crop down, but I don't know how good they would look. But no, they were saying that the butcher should be from the Meatpacking Guild, which obviously is a crude joke, which I approve of. But I just said there's a lost guild where all like the craftsmen and artisans are in.
Yeah, so they're kind of, it's not really an official guild in the same, like they don't have the Delvers kind of special abilities and stuff, but they kind of have, it's kind of like a half guild. Like they only have like half as much status as the full guilds. But yeah, like so a craftsman or like a shopkeeper could be kind of part of this, secretly part of the Delvers like laborers guild. So they have an identifying sigil and they help the Delvers out in secret and that sort of thing.
Probably best not to call it the laborers guild. Only because of name confusion.
Yeah, I was toying with some different names because the Lost Guild sounds like it's kind of evocative, but I don't think it really carries the right meaning. So I was thinking like, something about like they're workers, that's where I was thinking like maybe something like Laborers Guild, but I never really, like they aren't going to show up in this game unless maybe one of the shopkeepers just makes kind of reference to it in text or something and gives you a discount, something along those lines.
Right. Well, and this all goes back to, I don't know, obviously, there was a game called Delver's Mark that these guys were working on.
These guys being us, not
these guys. Well, I was trying to distance myself. These guys isn't Pixelscopic, but I suppose I am Pixelscopic now. So, but I just feel weird.
Well, when you said these guys, it sounded like some other people other than us.
Oh, so. No, sorry. No, Pixelscopic was working on a game called Delver's Mark, which would have been a tactics game in the vein of Final Fantasy Tactics.
Not quite, but it's closer. I mean, honestly, it would have actually been. It would have been a lot like a way faster version of what Darkest Dungeon is in terms of like the way the screen is laid out and the fact that it would have been a turn-based kind of active. Ours would have been sort of an active time battle, but very fast.
Yeah, it was. I don't think we've ever delved too much. Get it? I did that intentionally.
It happens. It's just in our brains. Yeah.
Yeah. But Tactics was the closest thing that I think we ever discussed being similar to what Delver's Mark was going to be, so that's why I said Tactics.
Yeah, and I mean there would probably be some similarities. We had several ideas for kind of spin-off games in the world. I mean, basically, I would love to take Delvers and make an RPG in every RPG subgenre. So like turn-based roguelike, tactics RPG, like a larger kind of strategy RPG where you're moving troops on an overworld. Like I would love to do all of those things and just keep using this universe. So we had some ideas that we would just kind of just shoot the shit and like talk about stuff. So I guess the ones that were most fully formed, obviously Delver's Mark we were working on for a while before we changed gears to Delver's Drop. So there's like one. Well, actually, I don't know if we even had a build. That was when Kobe was like deep in engine stuff. But then there was also what we were calling Battle Dash at the time, which ended up, we were working on that before Delver's Mark, and it ended up becoming Delver's Drop in a weird way. But that would have been, it's that like Delver's Drop on rails.
Zelda, right?
Well, that was Bump, which was literally Delver's Drop. So it went like Battle Dash, which was, imagine kind of like Pac-Man, like really fast Pac-Man, where you run around, pick up a weapon, and run over here and kill a bad guy, but you had to move on a grid. So it would have basically been Delvers on a grid, I guess is the best way to put it. So you could only run in straight lines, kind of thing. So we actually had a really rough prototype for that, and that's when I started working on the world and the characters a little bit, I think, or at least the style kind of became the Delver's Drop style. And then we switched gears a couple other times, and we're working on Delver's Mark, which would have been sort of like real-time turn-based, so turn-based but like very fast, active time battle style. And then we switched gears back to then to Bump RPG, which was the Pinball Zelda, which became Delver's Drop.
Right.
Which is now Dark Souls Zelda.
Yeah,
with some physics.
Dark Souls, Zelda, Diablo.
Yeah. Borderlands, that, and the other.
Yeah, Borderlands. I'd be Borderlands, Diablo. Playing through Borderlands again with the weapon system and kind of finally getting into learning how that all works because I've just been playing the game long enough really makes me want to play Delver's Drop again.
I finally, sorry, I was talking too much, and now I finally dug up all of the guild ideas and the official final names, which I have forgotten all of because I haven't had to write them in so long. So, because we changed I had even forgotten, we changed the Hanged Ones to the Hangman Hoods, which I think is a better name, but...
Yeah.
So yeah, I've got this whole list of like, there would probably never be a game that had all of these in a single guild, because that, like 15, 20 classes in a single guild is ridiculous since there are already 12 guilds. We might have a game that has like 2 or max 3 classes in a guild. But this is kind of my name bank that I would come to. So if it's like, oh, if there were a wizard, what guild would they be in? And so I jump in here and like look around and see. I don't even know if I might not have done wizard. No, actually, I've got a Wise, W-I-Z-E, or wizard under the Forge Blazers. So I kind of, because those could, I think I was tossing around the idea of actually putting a wizard in the Tower Watch for a while, which I also kind of like the idea of, but. The Forge Blazers was the hardest one to come up with names for the classes, actually. I mean, they're all magic users, but it's a very specific kind of magic users. So I might have to invent some other names at some point. But yeah, right. the cartographer was a member of the Compass Hearts. So scholars,
which changed to
scribes.
Compass Swords for a while.
Yeah, and then I decided to move them back away from something that sounded like combat. So like a Wayfinder or Wayfarer, Delve Master, Astrologer, Physiker, and I thought I had something else in here that is sort of like a Pathfinder, or I'll just put a couple things in here.
While you're doing that, I would like to point something out. You said that Delver's Mark would be like a quote faster Darkest Dungeons. There's a game that's like that, or there was a game series like that. Now it's more 3D, but Tales.
Well, but Tales you like move in real time, right? And actually jump and attack and that sort of thing.
Yeah, you do.
So, yeah, so.
But the old Tales still had character placement and stuff.
Yeah, so ours...
it'd be a turn-based Tales.
Yeah, I think there's weirdly enough, like, I feel like RPGs have been in such a rut for a long time in so many ways with, each game only has kind of minor variants and few of them stood out for a long time there, as at least kind of the JRPG style. And so I always want to do something kind of in that genre, but shake it up a little bit. And so this would have been, it's a little bit like this, a little bit like that. So like a little bit fast traditional Final Fantasy, like a Final Fantasy 6, 4 or 6 kind of style, but also sort of like more of a Darkest Dungeon type of view, kind of, where your characters are in a like lined up sort of. And again, like positioning would matter and so on. And I still like to make that game. It's honestly, I think it would end up feeling more like a puzzle game in some ways, based on kind of where we were going with it. But
well, not to go back to this too much, but I think you could have done Darkest Dungeon better than Red Hook.
We'll make a game kind of like that someday, I'm sure.
Honestly,
like I would, I guess, like, as hard as it's been to make a real-time game like this, and as much as I kind of get interested in the fiddly bits of like status effects and skill trees and so on, I kind of feel like, maybe I should have just made a turn-based game. Would have made my life a lot easier. We wouldn't have to deal with collision boxes and that sort of thing. But anyway. We should probably go back to art because I've been staring at a spreadsheet for the last 5 minutes or so. But hopefully people got to screen cap that and see some cool classes or whatever.
See me after class, children, and I'll hook you up. Not really. I won't do that. See, here's the reality. I want all the lore. I don't necessarily want to share the lore until the game is out. I just want to hoard the lore and learn everything, so that when it's time to share it, everyone will have to come to me.
So you're gonna like start charging for your knowledge? Is that kind of where you're going with this?
Well, technically speaking, I am charging for the knowledge when I'm doing a let's play.
Okay.
One could.
Of course, I mean, they don't have to pay for that though.
One could argue that they're paying the ultimate price, which is time.
You're getting super meta on me.
It's a little bit meta, yes, but it was just for the sake of the joke. I'm being called a lore whore, which I am. I really, my favorite thing about video games, generally speaking, is the lore. I like, which is one of the reasons why I'm not quite as big a fan of things like Dark Souls.
You're not as big of a fan of Dark Souls?
I mean, I like the game, mechanically speaking. I've enjoyed my time with it, but we've talked about this on.
I guess I don't remember
on
this
the stream
conversation
before, so I won't highlight it too much. But a game that makes lore optional is not a game that I think is doing it properly. I don't think it should be optional.
But I mean, yeah, I think maybe Dark Souls. Well, it's interesting that Dark Souls kind of went out of its way to hide lots of things, and I think a lot of people just play through it and they're like, well, that was fun. And then onto the next game with not even an ounce as much lore. But then like the fact that people sussed out so much stuff, like, I mean, I would never put that kind of time into a game, but I really respect it. And I think what's interesting to me is that it's kind of like the kind of thinking that that people who study religion and scripture and so on, the kind of thinking that they put into interpreting those texts and scriptures is actually very similar to the kind of mentality that is applied to Dark Souls. It's just like, it's really interesting to me. I mean, I never did any religious studies really, but as a Christian, it's something that's important to me. But it's really interesting that like a game kind of can engender this sort of people put all this time into interpreting in a work of entertainment that the wide world has no idea exists, kind of thing.
Right. Doom says archaeology.
Yeah.
Which is, yeah. I mean, and I like the lore of Dark Souls. I do. I think it's really interesting. I think it's fairly unique for a fantasy setting. But and Doom is, I guess, pressing me on this, so I'll go a little bit more in depth. Metroid has optional lore where you have to scan things.
Yeah.
You don't have to scan
and
everything.
Halo does to a large degree too, because Halo has a pretty complex.
Oh yeah, Halo. As much as I dislike the games and I guess like the casual mentality that comes about them, I actually really enjoy the lore of Halo.
Mm-hmm.
Sorry.
And I was actually reading up on Halo lore last night just because I kind of knew bits and pieces, and I had only played Halo 3. And so you kind of put some of it together, but it's actually kind of hard to figure out what's going on when you just kind of jump into Halo 3. And so it seems like they kind of went off the deep end with Halo 4 and 5 and added a bunch of new stuff. But, maybe some of that was
Doom and I are arguing about that now. Halo 4, 5, and the sixth one that's going to be coming out really like streamlined the lore and changed a lot of stuff, and I'm not a big fan anymore. But the old lore, I really liked. And I like the lore of Metroid. Not that there's a whole lot. It's very compartmentalized.
Yeah, and I probably don't know much about that. I mean, I know the major characters, but I guess I don't know like how all these things came to be. Like how are Metroids created? What is a mother brain? Like I don't really know any of that stuff.
Right, and a lot of it's non-canon, and a lot of it is
like all Nintendo lore.
Yeah,
sort of like it's non-canon until they publish a Zelda Historia and make it all canon.
Yeah, and the Zelda Historia is crazy.
Well, I think some of that is kind of bullshit too. I mean, I seriously doubt Nintendo like maybe
curse Faker.
That can't possibly be true, but
I don't know. It doesn't happen often.
Well, I try to rein it in. I feel like we used to drop a lot of bombs here on the stream in the olden days, but maybe not. I don't know. Sorry. What? I was.
You were saying that the
totally
lore
forgot.
for Zelda is bullshit. Some of it's bullshit.
No, just like I don't think that the lore itself is inherently bad or anything. I mean, I think I just don't think they had a plan all along, I guess is what I'm saying.
Oh no, absolutely not.
And then people started writing on the internet trying to connect all these things, and they're like, then Nintendo's like, oh, we can capitalize on this. Let's publish a book and hire some writer to tie it all together.
Yes.
So it's kind of like retroactive. I mean, I like every comic book is kind of like, or every comic book series, I suppose, like superhero series. A lot of the lore and even the canon lore is like retroactive. Like some new writer gets a hold of it and has way better ideas most of the time anymore than what the original writers had, like back in the 70s when it was just like, oh, this is all just fun silliness. So they actually kind of clean it up and make it make sense or add depth to characters and whatever. But I don't. It feels so false to me when you kind of read that stuff. That even if it does make sense, it just kind of feels like you kind of see like the underpinnings of like, oh, this was written by someone in 2006 trying to like piece these things together because everyone wants to know what the truth behind all of Zelda lordom is all about, I guess.
Yeah, well, the triple timelines. Dithy is saying the Black Library, which is the lore compendium for Warhammer, especially Warhammer 40k. I don't remember if they had a different name for it for fantasy, but Warhammer Fantasy has also changed, as I was talking to Dithy about yesterday. It's now the Age of Sigmar, which I don't even know what that is anymore. But yeah, well, and there's I guess an interesting dilemma when it comes to these big, massive, conglomerate storytelling things, where, well, these two people originally made Superman, and then Superman was bought out by another thing, and then that other thing fired the person who was writing it and brought someone else in who never looked at the old stuff, and just progressed from the 1940s to 2016. the same thing happened with Zelda. The original Zelda game writers. There's a couple people who are still there from the old school, but they bring in new people. So it's just a time thing, really. And it sucks, and it's bad for lore and people like myself who are lore whores and who like to chart that sort of stuff. But it's just a product of. It's just a product of where that stuff kind of goes.
Mm-hmm.
So there's not much any of us can do about it except, I guess, take a canon that we like and roll with it and argue with people who take another canon, like Star Wars, for example.
Mm-hmm.
Star Wars is a great example of canon gone batshit. Because Lucas had his canon, and then there was levels of canon. And then Disney bought it out and said, there's no more levels of canon, there's our canon, and then there's Legends.
Yeah.
So...
And they were never gonna satisfy everyone.
No, and I think that's a perfect example of when a company changes hands, they want to make their lore the standard lore, and this is where you get multiple canons.
I mean, for Disney's sake, I think they just it was so sprawling. Like, I guess they were either gonna have to it probably would have cost them like a few $1 million to like go through and decide like, okay, what's actually canon and what can we work with for the new movies. And I think they're probably going to like retroactively to some degree, and I haven't read up too much on what they're doing, but
they've started doing exactly what you're saying.
Retroactively decide what's canon based on the direction they want to go with the new movies.
They've already started doing it.
Yeah.
Well, and what they've also been doing is they've been going and looking at the expanded universe and saying, oh, well, we like that idea, so we're going to take that and adapt it. Like Kylo Ren and Rey, not to get into the mess of is The Force Awakens a good movie or anything like that, but just an example, they're Jason and Jaina Solo from the EU. Everybody has pointed it out. It's not like it's a hidden thing.
Mm-hmm.
And I think even Abrams basically said, yeah, we're totally going through and taking stuff from Legends and making it fit into our canon.
But I think that is a smart way to do things, though, to call it because I mean, really, like actual legends out in the in the world in different cultures. I mean, that it's like stories built on stories built on stories by lots of different people. So, I mean, it's really like this is the modern cultural equivalent, except that we now have like the culture has perfect memory due to the internet and so on.
Oh, absolutely, and that's one of the things. That's one of the things I like about lore, is not just lore as a story, but lore as a method of storytelling and watching it evolve. I play in 4 or 5 different forum games where the entire purpose is just to write like your gods and you make a campaign world, and the goal is just to make mythology and simulate like old stories and stuff. That's the entire goal, and I love doing that stuff. And it's collaborative. There's like 20 different people in the newest game that I'm playing. So every hand in the pot, things change, things morph, things move around. So, and Detsy points out the Brothers Grimm versus Disney, where absolutely the Grimm stories were much darker and much more.
Well,
like,
and those are actually based on the who is it's like the Mother's Goose. It's like the French version of all the German fairy tales. I forget the person who compiled. I want to say Poirot, but that's the detective dude.
That is the detective dude.
I think it starts with a P, but then probably there's a P in like the middle of his last name. Every time I'm like, I think their name starts with a P. It's like, there's a P in there, but it's nowhere near the beginning. So, right. I don't know. Are you frantically looking that up right now? Because now I'm curious.
No, I'm not, but I can.
Could you frantically look that up right now?
Yes, I can frantically look that up.
Thank you.
me see. Children's and Household Tales, which is the Grimm's Fairy Tales.
I mean, just look up Mother Goose.
Oh, Mother Goose.
Yeah, because I'm pretty sure it's like the Mother Goose. It's like the same guy or compiled in the same book or something like that.
Let me see. Edmund Spenser.
Yeah, and I might be wrong about that too.
17th century English readers would have been familiar with Mother Hubbard, a stock figure when Edmund Spenser published his satire Mother Hubbard's Tale in 1580. The real personage of Mother Goose may be based on ancient legends of the wife of King Robert II of France. So I think that's where you're getting the French connection. Another authority on the Mother Goose, Iona Opie, does not give any credence to either Elwes Thomas or the Boston suppositions. There's a lot, like, oh man, this is a rabbit hole of epic proportions. I found who you're talking about. I think Charles Perrault, Perrault.
Yeah, it looks like Perrault.
Yeah.
So it might not be Mother Goose, but is that true that he basically did the tidied up? We go in with our little broom and sponge.
Yeah, it was
and
called
whitewash
Historias au Comtesse de Temps Passés, or La Comtesse de Marie Aoi, which is stories or fairy tales from past times with morals, which is the original, or Mother Goose tales. Yeah, he basically did a stock standard clean version. So you are correct, it did start with a P. Yeah, the Donkey Skin, Sleeping Beauty, Little Red Riding Hood, Bluebeard, the Master Cat, which is Puss in Boots, Cinderella, were all in this book. And this was pre Brothers Grimm.
The Perrault guy was
Perrault.
pre Brothers Grimm?
Yes.
Oh, really? Because I could have sworn that was after.
He published in 1694.
I mean, obviously the stories are all old, so I guess maybe the Brothers Grimm went and collected them from the actual kind of the folk who had inherited the folk tales. Maybe that's
right.
kind of
the first published edition of the Brothers Grimm tales was 1812. So yes, Perrault was.
So they're not. I thought they were much older.
Grimm. Yeah. The Mother Goose Tales book from France was published in 1700s, like the full book. I'm trying to find 1697 was when it was put out. So yeah, definitely before. Isn't history awesome? I think it is.
Do any of our viewers think it is?
Well, I know Dithy does.
Or are we are we in the weeds at this point?
We might be a little bit in the weeds. But everyone should find this interesting. Storytelling is a grand tradition of the human spirit, and you should all be excited about it. Says an unbiased opinion. I mean, that's all that Tolkien is. Was just taking Proto-Norse and Norse stories and making them English. That's all he did.
Well, he created a lot more on his own. I mean, some of it was based on other stuff, but there are definitely things that are based more strongly upon a mythology.
Trolls, elves.
Yeah. But he created his own world.
Oh, well, absolutely.
Yeah, I guess the stories themselves, I think some of them probably are based on the sagas and so on, but he actually, didn't he all those stories are original to him?
Oh well, yeah, the Lord of the Rings story is, I suppose, more or less original.
Yeah, I mean there are references to like the Nibelungenlied, or however that's pronounced, the Germanic Ring Saga, which is an opera and all of that.
Right. Fun fact from chat: Tolkien hated the tone of The Hobbit. He thought it was condescending. The tone of the narrator was condescending, so he tried to rewrite it with a serious narrator. And Lord of the Rings have.
Originally The Hobbit was written for his kids.
Yes.
So it's much simpler.
Right. Well, and originally the Hobbit wasn't connected to Lord of the Rings.
Yeah. Because he was making all these stories kind of as a hobby, and he was making the world, I guess I should say, as a hobby, and had all these notes that he was just putting together, and then he made, he told his kids The Hobbit and or wrote it down.
He was inventing languages because he was a linguist, and he started making stories to go along with the languages that he was writing. So yeah, and I actually have a copy. Well, I don't, but I will when my parents pass away. My mom has a first edition copy of The Lord of the Rings and The Hobbit, and they're all signed.
Sweet.
So worth a lot of money. Not that I would actually.
I would love to have those. Yeah. Because I have. I mean, I don't have any like old copies or anything like that, but I have a very large Tolkien shelf. With lots of the art books, different artist interpretations, and I have the annotated Hobbit and some things like that. I used to just pour through those when I was in like junior high and high school.
Yeah.
I haven't in a while. I should get back to it at some point.
I have a lot of first edition copies of the Redwall books.
Oh, I read those too when I was in probably also junior high and high school. Once I finished Lord of the Rings, I was reading Redwall.
And I have a signed first edition copy of Marl Fox.
Cool.
I actually got to meet Brian Jocks before he passed away.
Oh, I didn't know he had passed away.
Oh yeah, unfortunately, I think 4 or 5 years back.
Yeah, I stopped keeping track because there were just so many of those books, and I was like, I hit college and I was like, I'm probably not gonna read anymore. Well, and they also got kind of repetitive because they would always. I think he tried to change it up at one point. Now I don't remember much about the kind of the plot of those books, but I remember the first few a bit better. But yeah, it's like all the bad guy always dies by some indirect means. I was just like shaking my fist in the air the first time he actually let the protagonist kill the antagonist.
Yeah,
because it was always like a bell, would drop on someone and crush them, or or like some other creature would kill. By the way, these are all like for anyone who doesn't know, the Redwall books is basically like mice and badgers and rabbits and things like that with armor and weapons, and it's actually like. I wouldn't say it's dark at all, but it's
some of them are.
Yeah,
a lot of the earlier ones.
I mean, Lord of the Rings isn't dark either, but it kind of actually has like a similar tone to Lord of the Rings, where they talk a lot about food. There are a lot of recipes of how awesome this like pie with leeks and meat, and it's a pretty convincing world in its own way, in spite of the fact that it's all like animals. Like it's not cute, I guess.
Yeah.
There's a little bit of cuteness sometimes.
And all the different animal races have different cultures. Like the otters are all like fisher people, and they live in the oceans and the rivers, and they're all just very folksy and down to earth. And the moles are all like erudite. And the hedgehogs are all like rednecks. Not to be not to use a bad label, but they are all like country bumpkin kind of people. And there are some bird races, like the sparrows are all like super friendly, and they just like helping. And the owls are of course all sage, and the eagles are all majestic and proud. And the badgers are like these uber warriors. They're like the pinnacle of like paladin honor. And the mice are, I guess, like everyman kind of people, and like all the like weasels and stoats and foxes are all evil. I have something I should show you that needs to be in the game. I have no idea what weapon this is. Does this have a name, Dithy? I will send it to you. I've never seen that.
Do we get a description or?
I sent you the picture over Skype. Yeah, mice are all good. Rats are always evil.
So what is this? What is this weapon?
I have no idea. I'm waiting for it to.
Kapinga?
I guess that might be the name. I'm waiting for Dithy to tell me the name. Letting stream catch up, which should be now.
By the way, we're starting to push the toward 8 o'clock here.
I've been looking at the time.
Yeah, so I literally get a headache if I stream for too long. I don't really know if I'm just like, I guess I don't have to talk much during my normal kind of day-to-day, or if it's like a combination of talking, staring at a bright screen, like simultaneously, and wearing headphones is somehow disorienting for me or something. I've really, I'm not sure.
It's a really weird throwing axe knife thing, the Kapinga. It's definitely interesting. I like it.
Yeah, it looks like something that really ought to be in Dark Souls because it's so bizarre.
I absolutely agree.
With
it should be in Dark Souls.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Not that I ever used like throwing things in Dark Souls. Doom is complaining that all the US people having signed copies of books. My mom, I don't know how she got the signed copies of Lord of the Rings and The Hobbit, because Tolkien was British, and my mom has never traveled overseas. So I mean, she must have got it when he was here, or had a friend get it to her and ship it to her. I have no idea how she got them. I've never thought to ask. And my mom is a big bookie. I mean, obviously that's where me reading comes from. My parents were both very big on my brother and I reading. She has all of the Harry Potter books signed, first edition, and she has them all first edition French, and all of those are signed as well.
Harry Potter in French?
Yeah, my mom is fluent in French.
Okay.
I should say my mom's never been overseas. She has been overseas, but she wasn't overseas when Tolkien was alive.
Yeah.
So she's been to Paris. She's been to Beijing. She's been all over now, and since I've been alive. But yeah, no, my mom is fluent in French, and she knows a little bit of German. And my brother is fluent in Japanese.